Michael Daughtry isn't a bad director. That's not my opinion because I haven't seen any of his movies, but from what I get from other people, his horror movie has a cult following and he has strong ties to Legendary Pictures. He sounds like he's worth his salt, but I'm not sure about what he brings to the table with a film like this. I feel the big Hollywood studios more and more are hiring talent that can certainly do the job, but don't really offer any of their own personability to it. And I hate that. And the argument is, what do you want? It's a Godzilla monster movie. Why do we need a director's touch? And to them I say, think about it. What have been some of the best Godzilla films? Answer, the ones where they let the directors or writers have the freest reign. All Out Attack, Shin Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Biollante, Godzilla 2014, among others, stand out to me because they have the most creative touch to them and feel the least corporate. Again, that's what I really loved about Godzilla 2014. From a cinematography standpoint, it almost felt like an independent film, creating its own visual vocabulary and showing a clear affinity for films before it, whilst charting a course for its own gain. And this really helped alleviate the film in areas where it might have fallen short. I feel like I'm going to get less of that here. It doesn't help that 2020's endeavor will be directed by Adam Wingard, who's most known for, bad movies don't mean a bad director, far from it. These are two directors with horror backgrounds, and at least from my experience, horror films have a hard time escaping a feeling of shallowness. You might be scared, but by the time it's over, it's, well, that was a thing. And they can also be prone to beating you over the head with their messages, but more on that later. And again, for those who don't think it's that much of a concern, may I remind you that the last time we had a Hollywood incarnation of Godzilla by a neutral director and money-grubbing studio, we got this. I don't think it will be as bad. I don't know if anything could be that bad again, but my point still stands. There's a concern that Warner Brothers just doesn't care as long as the director doesn't try to hide Godzilla. It brings in the onlookers and it makes money. I'm not trying to diss the horror genre by any means. It's just that the genre itself often seems misunderstood. I don't like putting pressure on these people. They might be nice guys, but I have to call it like it feels. The direction. So, as I was finishing up this video, wouldn't you know it, Warner Brothers drops the second trailer, and obviously it impacted a lot of my take on things. Certainly didn't feel like an ill-timed interruption. What? I sound aggravated? You sound aggravated. It's December. The movie premieres at the end of May. Who decides the timing of these trailers? I still think some of my thoughts stemming from the original trailer have validity to them though, as this second trailer almost purposefully seemed to confuse the viewer from a narrative standpoint, as if they're trying to misdirect you, even though really it showed more of its hand than it should have in doing so. In the first trailer, there was an overarching narrative here that humans are a threat, they need to be humbled, and perhaps giant monsters are the solution? It was really tough to see how this works. My guess on what they were going for was that giant monsters attack and kill without any bias, so maybe it's the idea that this is the cleanest, most ethical way of dealing with this situation. Humans, or perhaps monarchs, have something of a god complex for these giant creatures, and we must bow down and be humble to them, let them reign. And perhaps there's some device or system that allows them to regulate how much damage they do. Of course, that all sounds quite stupid, but it is what the trailer led a lot of people to believe, and that guess, according to the second trailer, is half right for the moment. In that it's clear that they're continuing from a thread in 2014 about some of these monsters bent indirectly on annihilation for their own benefit, and there being others that protect it without any real purpose other than dominance, which is a line thrown out by Sally Hawkins in the second trailer that all monsters are vying for supremacy. But I think if there's any real Red Robin line in this trailer, it's that one. Because Mothra isn't out for glory. She doesn't listen to Imagine Dragons or any of that trite. She's a moth, and a good monster on top of that, who only got upset when the twin fairies were tampered with because reasons. Mothra's motives are too complex for you, and Godzilla likes to hibernate, so he's only in it to protect the place he sleeps and swims in. There's also what I considered the best scene in this trailer, which probably gave some people Godzilla Resurgence vibes, where there's a meeting between Monarch and some high government brass. The latter mockingly phrases Monarch's idea of letting Godzilla do his thing, and we get Serizawa's retort.
So you'd want to make Godzilla our pet?
No. We would be his.
So this suggests what Vermega said in the prior trailer to some extent, and it could have been that her speech in the first trailer was intended as misdirection. Like some are theorizing that Vermega's character makes a mistake which unleashes this calamity, and that speech in the first trailer might have been her trying to make up for it with some crazy logic, which I could at least possibly see working. Or it's still the wreck human civilization thing to save the rest of the world take or slant on it, which I hope not. This destroying the world to save it is in right now, and that's a problem. It detracts from the film, and it instills the idea that the writers and producers behind this didn't think very hard on how to move forward with this shared universe of theirs. They have a team of writers, and apparently have been working on this for months, but they still ended up on the most predictable thing. After 2014, there was a lot of ways this story could go, but we end up with this? It seems almost too obvious. Now, they did hint in Kong Skull Island that Monarch is interested in these creatures, and the way they talk about them, it's as if they were some kind of paleontology cult, so it's not as if this is some kind of development that's out of the blue. I think it's just that many of us were hoping it was something a bit more outside the box. You need some degree of mystery with giant monster movies, like Surface. Surface is riddled with a lot of stuff you've seen before, but in terms of its ambition and willingness to tell its story gradually was ahead of its time in the pop culture television scene. Had something like Surface come out on Netflix today, I feel it would have had greater impact than what it got on NBC. Oh hell, Nimrod. So I mentioned earlier how horror movies beat you over the head with their messages sometimes, and the first trailer alone already amplified that concern. I've said it before. A speech is a speech. If you put one in a trailer, it needs to be clear what the character is talking about. That said, man, was it bad. I mean, Vermega's speech could always be re-edited for the movie or have new meaning within proper context of the film itself, and she does a mostly good job of delivering it, except maybe with that emphasis on infection. But it's a bad speech, and I don't think it sat well with fans. Hopefully, the film isn't as painfully obvious or has something else to offer other than this tiring we are the problem plot. This isn't new. It was old when freaking Blue Gender did it. It was getting old when Watchmen did it in the graphic novel. I'm not saying you can't try, but we see too many of these stories from a grand perspective. We never get a personal take on it, and I think that's why the conspiracy stories of the powerful elite finding ways to drastically reduce the massive population of inferior humans continues to find a foothold in many others' lives. Or as Albert Wesker put it,
every day, humans come one step closer to self-destruction. I'm not destroying the world, I'm saving it.
In other words, I feel like this running theme is starting to affect people's actual health. There's only so much one can take about hearing they shouldn't exist. There is a human story here, and it would be nice to actually see this from a young person's perspective, but who knows if that's what we're actually going to get, and not just an ill-timed menagerie of cliches. Are we rooting for the monsters? The humans? Or only some of each party? Is it meant to be ambiguous? The writing. I do not want this to end up as some reference marathon where each successive movie has plot point after plot point that's a nod to some other Godzilla film. Not that I would be against the oxygen destroyer or drill missiles or the ice tanks or what have you, but I hate when films bring those up and only do with them what you've already seen before. It's a simple, dead-headed way to instill excitement. It's pandering of the laziest and despicable degree. If they do introduce something from the lore, so to speak, it better be in a way that serves the tone, messages, and ideas of the story. Not just something that's there so you as a Godzilla fan feel satisfied, and some YouTuber can make an Easter egg and origins of Hetero Explained video, as if this is some sort of vital historical knowledge we all must now know. Are these monsters just going to make an appearance and fight? Probably. I just hope there's a little more to them other than, we're here now. Deal with it. Get out of here, Kumonga. Okay. So these concerns have already bled into one another, but like I said, the speech is bad, and in terms of the story, I feel like I know all there is to know already. And this is funny because it was here in my original recording before the second trailer struck that I emphasized that while too much of the plot had been unmasked, they at least hadn't shown too much yet of the other stuff, and well, you can throw that out the fucking window. Because there's too much in here. Much too much. Seems like people have come to accept that this is just the way Hollywood does things now. Some even see it as a good thing. Another way to unfold a story piece by piece, except you've unfolded it enough already that we already know it's an origami. Why'd you have to do it? You just couldn't wait. There's some who aren't worried about any of this. They just want to see the monsters fight. I want that too. I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't. But I'm still one who's in it for the complete experience. If the movie was a disaster, the only thing that could save it for me would be one heck of a monster brawl. But it would really have to be something. However long this goes on, I don't want it anywhere near the Transformers and Fast and Furiouses of the world, where people just mindlessly slurp it up because it's entertainment, man. Just enjoy it. Don't be so hard on it. I don't share that mentality. Some people are there just for the spectacle, and that's fine. I would argue that 2014 actually is all about the spectacle, and that's why I like it, even though it's not the kind of spectacle most have come to know in the 21st century. It is a slog, or slow burn, but in that classy eating away at you vibe that, outside the original film, always felt like what Godzilla 1985 was striving for, despite its unintentionally hilarious ending. The gloomy imagery and foreboding dialogue churning into fruition of panic and death, panic and death. All I'm saying is give me a stage, and by that I don't mean just a city to trample, but give me some gravitas to this monster brawl that through some form of thematic engineering taps into our primal wanderlust of the unknown, the absurd, and the mystic. I'm not saying achieve it, just try it. Too many actors. I don't know why the cast is so large here. It could be because some of these people will be returning in future installments, just like other actors here, but we'll see. We know who our focus is, so what's Verizon guy doing here? I swear if he even so much mentions a phone plan for any reason, I will tear out my seat from a theater. She's just trying to make a living, Seth, I know. One thing we haven't seen here is a human villain or antagonist driving the action. Vermega seems to be filling that role, though her intentions are a little muddled, lest assumptions prove correct. We have the line "you're a monster" seemingly directed towards Vermega in the first trailer, and there is one valid mystery that arises here. How does Ghidorah get out? If he's one of the so-called titans they found, then what happened? Why would anyone release him? He's a gold giant three-headed dragon. You know that's bad news. The only, albeit cynical, guess and reason is that they want Ghidorah to destroy human civilization to some degree, and they think they can control it. Yes, that sounds dumb. Could it somehow work regardless? Sure. Absolutely. I hope not, though. And again, this is where the killing the world to save it part depresses me, because there are so many other creative ways I feel you could implement a villain into a movie of this nature. Shin Godzilla proved it. There wasn't any villain per se, but you had tons of antagonistic forces, and it showed you could create a bunch of kinds of different oppositions. That kind of stuff is interesting and plays on real life in such a brazen way that its blasé contrast in comparison to the larger-than-life stakes at hand creates something you can believe in. But if the human actions are unbelievable, it only hurts what the previous films spent time building, and that's something I don't want to see. The large cast on top of the monsters is a lot to juggle. I just hope it can stay focused, and certainly a good human villain or antagonist would help do this. The release. I know the purpose of these trailers is to instill excitement and build on top of that, but in the case of the second trailer, it gives the opposite effect to me and makes everything lukewarm on account of people's lack of patience. It's like eating some delicious junk food too early. Afterward, you really wish you hadn't because it spoiled the main course. So let's talk about the last shot of this trailer. Terrible idea. Should have never got the go-ahead. It's one thing to reveal both monsters, another to show them about to fight. When you think about it, all we're spared is seeing them touch. And not even that, really. It's not a spoiler to know they were going to fight, Seth. Yeah, but it's like they put it in there for the morons who still complain 4 years after the fact that there wasn't enough Godzilla. See, there he is right there. See, and he's fighting. And I have to be insulted right there with them whilst having it spoiled. You see where I'm coming from? You see why I'm kind of losing my temper a bit here? No one even seems to feel this way. Please don't tell me I'm the only one. I don't care if Godzilla 2014 killed your grandma. There's no other reason to put that in there other than to make up for the pressure caused by the last film's reserved take, which is an absolute shame. Complaints are fine. What do you think this video has been? But the unfiltered perpetuation of them is going to have an effect. I mean, again, with whatever frustrations you may have had about the last film, that's fine. And I understand emotions can get the better of people. And if you really thought that they would reserve Godzilla in this film as much as the last one, I really don't know what to say for it. I will say, however, that they do have a very similar shot before the final one that comes in the trailer, with Godzilla and King Ghidorah staring each other down, very firmly opposed. But there's numerous reasons why that shot works over the last one. For starters, they're heavily cloaked in a lot of shadow and clouds, so you don't get the full effect of them. And it's also intentional because it emphasizes what they're doing in this particular shot, as we get to observe their posture and battle stances, with Godzilla standing his ground almost like a sumo wrestler, and King Ghidorah looking all medieval, with its wings stretched out like Batman. This is an awesome shot. I love that. I might just take a screenshot or paint it or something and put it up on my wall. That might be my favorite thing to come out of all of this so far, is that shot. I love it. If I'm ever feeling too worried about things, I'll just look at that shot from now on. How about that? Oh well. I like how Ghidorah looks, at least. They did a good job with that. I can't really find any fault. I don't like Mothra. Her look in this one makes sense, and I'm accepting of it. It doesn't bother me or anything. But I was always a fan of the Heisei era Mothra when I was a kid. It was the most colorful, and she really stood out. I also liked the emphasis on the fuzz. The redesign in the later movies was cool too, and they seem to have built off of that in this one. Again, wish we hadn't seen almost in full in this trailer. I mean, it just showed way too much. She's made to look a little more threatening here, which makes me wonder what role she'll play, although I think we all know the answer to that question. They show her interacting with Millie as a larva in the older trailer. I wonder if that means Mothra will establish a human connection, as sort of a play on her own mythology. I don't like to be completely negative, so let's end this video on some positives. The score will be composed by Bear McCreary. The plot score I thought was great, and knowing Bear's in charge with this one is a good sign. I'm still more a fan of Bear's lesser-known stuff. Dark Void is still my favorite score of his. I still hold that the plot score paid respect to Ifukube as well, just not in a melodic sense. Happy to see David Strathairn return as Admiral William Stenz. He did a good job with leveraging everything in the last film, particularly the tone and mood, and portrayed effectively how someone of his position might act in that situation. It was subtle, but it was needed. Hopefully he can do the same or more with whatever time he has here. There's going to be a lot of monsters in this one. Skull Island's director teased that one of the monsters from his film would feature, if I had to guess, an evolved or slightly evolved version of the Skull Crawlers. Of course, you can't rule out another spider. Maybe the idea is that the spider from Skull Island comes from the Kumonga bloodline. Would be cool to see one of those hot spring bison rummaging through Mongolia, though. Or that tree bug. This monster arriving from the earth in the second trailer is totally Anguirus. Could be Baragon or a new monster. Would be nice if they threw in a monster to just keep us on our toes. I like that stuff. But I am pretty excited if that turns out to be Anguirus. Still don't know whether there will be any specific reasons why these titans wake up or exist the way they do, other than radiation and atom bombs woke them up.
Consequences.
Of course, the opening of Godzilla 2014 had pictures of fake and real creatures, adding quite nicely to a foreshadowing of a false dichotomy between fact and fiction, which I really liked. Perhaps we'll see more of that here, as it added nicely to the mysticism, so to speak, of the first film. And I guess that's really what I want to see in this universe of theirs. If these movies each have their own stories and themes, what will be the overarching themes of all of this? Is there a bigger picture? I don't know what we'll get here exactly, but make no mistake, in the first two films, there's a lot of stuff about spirituality. Godzilla is an all-powerful tyrant who's been on this earth longer than almost anything. Same with the Mutos, but they're about to mate. That can't happen, otherwise humans and almost everything else will go extinct. So leave it to Godzilla to roast them alive and prevent it. I emphasize the God part because even though he's something of a sea monster, the very premise of the film is close to a line in Jewish text called the Tanakh, where God kills a female Leviathan to prevent the destruction of the world. Kong was a god to the native people who worshipped him not solely because he could kill them in an instant, but because he got rid of the satanic skull crawlers who emerged from underground to feast on the living. Another big question I have is what role will Godzilla play from here on? He is a neutral force, but this film is still playing him up as the hero, at least in this trailer. 2014 did the same, but it didn't ignore the fact that he also killed thousands of people along the way, particularly with that school bus-filled bridge. You could have just swum under it, you clumsy oaf. Actually, I had it in text here a little bit earlier, but they seem to be inferring from this trailer that they've found a way to not only keep tabs on all of these so-called titans, but a way to manipulate or control them. But if that is what they're doing here, I really can't believe that they're borrowing that plot thread from the Heisei era. It was in the other eras of Godzilla films too, but it was very pronounced in the Heisei line. Well, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to comment, as I love getting other people's take on this stuff. I really do. Of course, I usually don't make videos like these. I just thought I'd try this out. I mostly talk about classical and orchestral music, among a few other things. But if you want more Godzilla material on this channel, there is some. Hey, there's a video right there, talking about the music of Godzilla. There's also initial impressions of the first trailer, but that's kind of old news now. I recommend these vids if you're interested. Feel free to check out the rest of the channel. But for now, that's it. Have a good one, and I hope you're as excited for this film as I am. Even if I hate this thing, I'll probably watch it in the theater at least twice.